Okay.
Adapt to time. It's all good. I have to tell you one funny story about Sue and me, and it might have been with your sister as well, with Debbie. We were making guacamole, and we had God, like 20 avocados, and we cut one open. And you know how sometimes avocados can have like the little black kind of string look through it? And we thought those were worms. And so we opened all of them and we decided we couldn't possibly make this guacamole with all these worms. And we threw the whole batch out and started all over again. We did some crazy things in college, but we were just learning. So it's all good. But thank you very much for the introduction, Sue. And just to be here is always so yummy. I love your community and your willingness to step into so many different teachings and perspectives. It keeps us vital and it increases our aliveness to be hearing different points of view. So thank you for that. Today we're going to visit the world of the mystic. And I will start with the question, are you a mystic? Do you consider yourself a mystic? Likely you will say no. And I'm here to say that you may well be a quiet mystic. Because across centuries and cultures, mystics arise wherever human beings refuse to remain on the surface of life. And I'm quite certain that all of you that are in attendance and are participating in your spiritual community are absolutely refusing to remain on the surface of light. Mystics appear when inherited belief, moral instruction, and social identity are no longer sufficient to answer the deepest questions of existence. When the existential questions start to plague us, we can't go out into general society and get those answers. We have to go deeper. Mystics are not interested in religion as reassurance. They're interested in truth as transformation, reality as the place to sit rather than story of what we wish something would be or someone wants to pretend something is. They do not ask, what must I believe to belong? They ask, what is real and what does reality require of me? When we step into what reality requires of me, we start to live in the truth of our essence. And I'm quite certain that each of you have asked this question in one form or another. What is real and what does reality require of me? This question, asked sincerely and lived faithfully, gives rise to mysticism in every tradition. If we go back to the tap roots of any tradition, we find that the early urgings of that tradition were most likely generated by mystics because they were asking those deeper questions. They were willing to sit outside of dogma and outside of tradition and look deeper. Mystics are defined by orientation rather than doctrine. That's not to say doctrine is not important and that sacred books and texts are not vital to our exploration of the spiritual journey. Of course they are, but they're not dictating our understanding of reality. Across traditions, they share a commitment to direct experience over inherited belief. This is key to the mystic's journey. I want to experience this personally. I don't want you to tell me what it feels like and how it might be if I connect with the divine. I want that experience for myself, and I will put my words and my language to that experience. We understand as mystics, truth must be encountered, not just accepted. And we practice radical interior honesty until we plumb the depths of what we have to believe within ourselves, until we bring all that up and say, what do I honestly believe? Not what sounds good, not what society's demanding of me, not what I feel in judgment over or guilty about or regretful for, just the interior honesty of myself. That becomes my practice. Radical. This practice of being a mystic is a radical practice. It's not simple. You don't enter into the mysticism world with a dance and a flight. You enter in with a sincerity and a commitment. Mystics face fear, desire, ambition, contradiction without turning away. So here's the tricky part. We don't just say, because this is difficult, I'll push it back into the background and maybe not deal with it. We allow what life brings to us, moment to moment, to be that which we work with. We don't have to go anywhere. You know this from life. You don't have to go anywhere to find something, find the grist for the mill. You simply have to show up every day. This honesty that mystics bring to the exploration, the interior exploration, dismantles the egoic narratives and it replaces certainty of something where we think we know with the integrity of knowing it. Integrity is very different than certainty. Integrity needs to be the path we're on all the time. What are we bringing to the light using our integrity? One of the most universal features of mysticism is the passage through unknowing. And we all know that. We sit in the unknowing every day. So we are mystics. We're already on this path doing these things. And yet we often think of the term mystic as being something, someone that is somehow a little bit outside of all of this. They're doing some deeper work than we are. And I'm here to say, no, you're doing the mystical work. Mystics do not romanticize suffering, but they refuse to treat it as meaningless. Suffering matters. We approach it, we work with it, we dance with it, we come to understand it because it is the grist for the mill. When suffering is met with presence rather than resistance, it becomes formative rather than destructive. Formative. How are we forming this soul, this being that we are? What are we using as the tools and life's lessons to give us formation rather than destruction? Female mystics have shaped the heart of mysticism across traditions, often without institutional authority. Probably some of those women that were burned at the stake were mystics. You know, it's not acceptable and hasn't been historically when women step outside of institutional authority. We're asked to stay within the guidelines, within the boundaries. And so how did they show up? The women, mystics, and the men as well, but women tended to show up through poetry, vision, prayer, embodied devotion. So they chose the avenues that were acceptable in order to show up with this deeper work. So one can say that the role of a mystic is to pull the earth up towards the heavens and the divine. To pull the earth up towards the heavens and the divine. What a wonderful job to have. The old image that has been throughout history of the human being is that part of our job is to connect the heavens with the earth. In the ancient understanding, we are vessels through which heaven and earth become connected. The mystic is practicing the art of being the vessel through many different tools, but practicing the art. Are you not already doing that? Yes, indeed you are. Poetry is the realm of the muses. The word music comes from the muses. The word museum comes from the word muses. And also amusing comes from the word muse. And in the old understanding, the muses are like spirits in the other world. They're sending us ideas and creativity and ways to be coherent and to be centered in the lap of the divine. They're not just coming, they're coming to bring this understanding and this settledness in the lap of the divine. This is where we want to sit. This is what muses and poetry and the mystics have in common. This is how they work together. When we mingle the energies of our spiritual and our physical dimensions, we blend our earthliness with our heavenly longings. Then we connect to the origins of life and we awaken the divine hidden within ourselves. When we blend our earthliness with our heavenly longings, I love that word longings. It's such a visceral word. You feel it in your body. There's not one of us, I am certain, that is in attendance today that doesn't know that longing to be in the relationship of the divine, however we want to language it. Mystics work all methods of churning, another fabulous word, churning. That's to say, meditation, contemplation, dance, poetry, devotion. For all of these emerge from the hidden holiness and the inner abundance of the soul, which by its own nature is both ancient and immediate. Ancient and immediate. It's in our grasp and it has a legacy, both. Mystics work in that world. You're working in that world. It is both meditative and it's also an outpouring, dance, poetry. Mystics are not simply sitting in a cave in meditation 24 hours a day. Some are, yes, but mystics are working into both worlds. So, how do we fit into this? There's an old notion from India that says that there are two great paths of practice. One is the path of introspection, the path of contemplation, meditation, the path of turning inside to find what's missing. And the other path is the opposite. It's the path of the creative arts. It's the path of expressing oneself from the inside out into the world. The practice of putting things in the world that weren't there. Your generosity, your service, your compassion, your willingness to step in where you're needed. These activities can also center us and give us a deeper sense of awakening and a more genuine sense of who we are. We can be on both of those paths because the mystics taught us this. Mystics have taught us that we can be introspective and we can also be joyful out into the world. That both of those are qualities that are enlarging our interiority. So we too are traveling these paths. Each of us uses the contemplative space. We were contemplative this morning, the beautiful prayers and music and the centering of the soul that took place before we go into the words. But we didn't escape without words. We're using both. We use the contemplative space to deepen into our core essence, but we also take our divine nature out into the world. These two paths are not mutually exclusive. How often do we ask of ourselves, am I being faithful enough or devoted enough? Or am I doing the work? What's the work of the path? Am I doing this? And wondering and evaluating. And I think the mystics showed us that it was more of an experiential. We get out and we experience the world, and that's the path. And we may experience through a book group, or we may experience it through a teaching or by a particular teacher or poetry or dance, or just sitting with someone. The beauty of the prayer that you offer to individuals who would like to sit in prayer is extraordinary. It is the path of the mystic. Julian of Norwich, a very famous, well-known mystic, lived enclosed in a small cell during a time of plague and social instability. During a grave illness, she received visions emphasizing divine tenderness rather than judgment. Her conviction was that all shall be well, emerging from suffering held in trust, not denial. So trust is one of the qualities, the attributes that we work hard to nurture. It is a very strong quality in the mystical tradition, and the mystics worked on trust because what they were doing, the work they were doing was so outside of the ordinary acceptable path. They had to trust that they were receiving information and guidance that took them there. Despite physical illness and institutional resistance, Julian of Norwich reformed religious communities. Her impact reached well beyond the small cell that she had spent her time in. She insisted that mystical depth must be grounded in humility, discipline, and courage. I would venture a guess that you all here are carrying humility, discipline, and courage. Rabia of Basra born into poverty and enslavement, transformed Sufism through her insistence on loving God without fear or reward. In her era, God was to be feared. That's what the teaching said. You didn't turn your back on God. You didn't question God. God was the omnipresent, powerful, and there was a very strong line between you and God. Her devotion stripped religion of transaction and replaced it with pure love. Pure love. That's what we all work with, right? The pure love of the divine. Mirabai defied social expectations of marriage and caste to live in open devotion to Krishna. Her songs reveal a mysticism of longing, intimacy, and fearless allegiance to divine love over social approval. How often do we ask ourselves, is this acceptable behavior? I'm not talking about being rude and things that we know we don't need to be offering into space around us, but there are other rules that we assign to ourselves about what's acceptable, and the mystics would have questioned that, would have at least explored whether or not those rules apply. I've spoken about female mystics, and of course, the male mystics across traditions embodied the same qualities, though through different cultural expressions. Francis of Assisi renounced wealth and status to live in radical simplicity. His devotion expressed itself through care for the poor, reverence for nature, and joyful humility. They did it differently. The male mystics did it differently, but they were operating on the same qualities. They just expressed into the world differently because that's what was acceptable and an easier path. Meister Eckhart taught a mysticism of detachment, urging listeners to release all images of God so that the divine reality could be known directly or back to personal experience. His teachings emphasized inner freedom over external conformity. Our liberation comes from an internal process. We cannot be liberated externally. No one can liberate you, even when they give you freedoms that seem like they're liberating. You can still hold yourself hostage if you so choose. The ultimate choice for liberation runs internally for us. So what do we do with that? Rumi's poetry, another way that the mystics worked into the world, emerged from grief after the loss of his beloved teacher Shams. His verses dissolve boundaries between lover and the beloved, teaching that longing itself is a path to union. Longing. It's not something to actually overcome and not have. It's something to use as a tool because it's a path. It's an intensity that burns inside of us. Ramana Maharshi, after a spontaneous awakening at a young age, lived quietly at the base of a sacred mountain. His teachings, which I'm sure many of you have heard about, is the Who Am I? The teachings of self-inquiry invited seekers to discover the false self and rest in awareness. Who am I? Such a simple teaching, and almost impossible to figure out. The Buddha left a life of privilege after encountering sickness, aging, and death. Those were his 3 signs that told him, you cannot learn about this interiority piece staying behind the palace walls. It won't happen there. You've got to step out. So he left his privileged life, living behind the walls in a palace, never having witnessed sickness, aging, death as just a norm on the streets. He didn't know what that looked like. And his awakening under the Bodhi tree articulated a path of liberation through insight, compassion, and freedom from attachment. Mysticism does not culminate in escape. The mystic returns to ordinary life with compassion, discernment, and humility. Authority becomes quiet rather than asserted. You're the quiet mystic. Mystics matter because they keep spiritual traditions alive. They remind us that attention is sacred, love is trustworthy, and transformation is possible. Mysticism is not reserved for saints. It begins wherever presence is chosen over distraction. Presence is chosen over distraction, honesty over illusion, and love over fear. Here we are, Course in Miracles. Here we are. I mean, the passage that was read this morning. These are the same qualities that have been taught for ages, and they're a mystic path, part of the mystic's path. Mysticism is life lived without armor. How do we take the armor off without thinking that our vulnerability is so challenged that we can't get up in the morning? Do we have to get up and put the armor on to be able to go into this world as it's showing up? Right now is a delicate time. It's a natural time to armor ourselves more instead of less. And yet, the antidote to what's going on in our outside world is to go armorless. That doesn't mean to be, stupid. It means we still have to use our discernment and our wisdom. That's different than armor. Mysticism is a practice of radical interior honesty, suffering held in trust, not denial, interior prayer with practical leadership, pure love, an integration of spirituality with nature, music, and healing. This is what mystics do. They integrate nature, music, healing with the care for the poor, reverence for all that is alive and around us, all sentient beings, and joyful humility. Mysticism includes laughter, lightness, creativity, inspiration, discipline, and self-awareness. Are you starting to feel like you're all mystics? You carry all of these qualities. Definitely, you see pieces of yourself in these words. Can you see yourself owning the language of a mystic? Stepping into your faith, your inquiry, your trust with abandon as an internal and external journey. The mystics expressed life through art, music, poetry. And why do these matter? Because art reveals what cannot be said. Poetry invites the heart into surrender. And music bypasses the mind and reorders the soul. Across traditions, mystics use different forms, but the aim is the same, to return the human being to direct experience of the divine. I don't know about you, but I would like to continue to be in direct experience of the divine. I want to share, I'm going to do a screen share. I want to share just a little bit of art from, let's see if I can get to this. Let me get back to oh, I'm not the host, so I don't think I can do that. Never mind. I was going to share a picture, a screenshot, but I don't think I can do that since I'm not hosting. I'll send it out. It might be something that would be lovely to actually post on your weekly newsletter. So these beautiful images from Hildegard de Bingen. She was an amazing mystic and expressed herself through sound. She wrote over 70 different psalms, musical passages, and just prayers that she put to music, which have been recorded and are beautiful. And she also was an incredible artist. So she used this creativity to be able to express herself and her belief into the world. So many beautiful mystics. Hildegard's illuminated visions of art were not symbolic inventions, but they recorded her mystical experiences. That's why they're so moving. And I know you will appreciate them when you see them. Her music was radically unlike later Western forms because it was unmetered, soaring, and spacious, designed to lift consciousness. So all music, what we heard this morning, in the deepest part of the soul, when music is expressed, it's bringing up the divine. And so it's always designed to lift consciousness, or in most music forms, I would say. Hildegard, she created over 70 sacred music compositions, and she believed that sound could restore harmony between body, soul, and the cosmos. Body, soul, and the cosmos. Music, sound. Now, today, of course, it's so popular to use sound as a healing because we understand that it has the capacity to do so much more than just be a nice sound to listen to. It restores harmony between the body, soul, and the cosmos. The most important, that we should be connected to the cosmic energy flow that's happening all around us. Because when we're disconnected, we feel lost. We're untethered. Rumi, of course, I'm sure you all know, his poetry dissolved the boundary between devotion and intimacy. The mystic here is not distant from the human failure. Instead, love becomes the path of awakening. I'm going to read just one poem to you, which is an invitation into longing beyond moral perfection. We are still walking the human path. Mystics were not godlike in that they had a perfection that we can't obtain or we are not. Here is one of Rumi's beautiful writings. Where there is ruin, there is hope for a treasure. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, it doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you have broken your vows 1,000 times, come yet again, come, come. I love that line. Come, even if you have broken your vows 1,000 times. Step back on that path. Step back into the beautiful mystical stirrings that are happening. Let's not deny ourselves the pleasure of walking the path of the mystic or stepping onto the landscape of creativity, of inspiration, and living into this unbounded love that mystics embraced. Because we're already doing it. Let's give language to it. So now I'd like to just lead you in a 5-minute meditation. So if you can just settle yourselves in and close your eyes. It's called The Mystic in Us. So begin by settling your body, letting your feet rest on the ground, or maybe perhaps you're sitting on a cushion. Let your sit bones rest on the cushion. And let your hands rest easily, totally relaxing your body. And allow your breath to arrive without effort. There is nothing we need to achieve here, nothing that needs to be improved. Just allowing ourselves to be here now. And notice the simple rhythm of breathing, not controlling it, not following it, just letting the breath be. Each breath is already an act of trust. Now gently turn your attention inward, not towards thoughts, but towards the quiet spaces in between the thoughts. The quiet space that notices. The mystic in you does not speak in words. It does not argue or explain, it listens. If thoughts arise, let them pass like weather. You do not need to push them away. Let the cloud just pass. You do not need to follow it. Return again and again to the spaces between. Return to the simple fact of being present. Now sense this. Beneath your roles, your stories, your responsibilities, there is a place that has always been awake. A place that has known love, a place that has endured loss, a place that has never left you. This is the mystic in you. The mystic is in the spaces between. You do not have to reach for it. You are already inside of it. Let your breath soften. Let your shoulders release. And notice how presence itself is gentle, unforced, faithful. This is what mystics across traditions discovered, that the sacred is not distant, it is intimate. If you encounter uncertainty, let it be here. If you encounter stillness, let it deepen. If you encounter nothing at all, trust that too. Unknowing is not absence, it is spaciousness. Spaciousness, we step into the spaciousness, the place and space between. Now gently offer this intention. I am willing to meet life as it is. I am willing to meet life as it is. No striving, no performance, just willingness. Feel how this willingness creates room for compassion, room for truth, room for love to move without being managed. And as we come to a close in this short meditation, sense your body again and your breath, the support beneath you. And carry this thought with you. The mystic in you does not leave when the meditation ends. It walks with you into ordinary moments, into listening, into kindness, into quiet courage. And taking one final natural breath for this meditation, and allowing yourself to feel back into the room. And when you're ready, gently, gently open your eyes. The mystic is within you, within every breath, within every action. You are carrying this legacy, this lineage, this important, valuable quality of beingness around with you. in your back pocket. And the acknowledgement of it and the commitment to it just makes it stronger and more powerful. But it's not something out there that we achieve or that we aim to be in. It's something that's already inside of us. And you're already doing it in so many beautiful ways. So take this into your week and notice where you are showing up as a mystic, and maybe not even a quiet one. Maybe you're a loud mystic. And thank you for sharing, allowing me to be with you today.